Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Director's Cut. Thank you for joining us. We'll start with Director Lynn Helms with July's production numbers.
Thank you, Bridget. I should introduce Bridget Denso. She's our new Public Information Officer. So if you've not had an opportunity to communicate with her about something that you want to know, what's going on at DMR, that's going to be the point of contact. So welcome. Yeah, welcome to our Director's Cut podcast and webcast for the July production in September. July was a really good month for the oil and gas industry. Saw a 1% increase in oil production and a 1% increase in natural gas production. We're at 1.18 million barrels a day. Another 2% or 2 more months like that, and we'll top that 1.2 that we have been anticipating as we went through the year. We've talked about we think we're going to get to 1.2 by the end of the year. It looks like it's really in sight, and so that's very encouraging. I did look back. It has been more than 2.5 years since we hit 1.18 million. So it has been a long haul, goes back really to early COVID times, December of 20, to reach back into, and we were on the way down at that point. So we were dropping from 1.19, got all the way below 1 million barrels a day. So it's encouraging to see the response and the growth. So want to talk about July natural gas production, pretty historic. The state of North Dakota has never before produced over 100 billion cubic feet of natural gas in a month. So that's a new record and a very significant milestone to surpass 100 billion cubic feet in a month. Looking at rig count, it is low. It's on the low side of what we anticipated and what we think we'd like to see out there for healthy industry activity. I talk a little bit about the drivers behind that. A lot of it is workforce. Also, I would say the second largest influence is the amount of merger and acquisition and developments along those lines that are taking place. So we're in the process of a kind of an enormous transfer right now with Ovintiv selling out to Grayson Mill, and that always disrupts the program because, for example, Ovintiv had a 2023 drilling and completions budget. Grayson Mill had one too, but they don't translate directly into, oh, we're gonna pick up your properties and your leases, but we don't necessarily pick up your plans for drilling and completions and frac crews and contracts and all of that. So happy to report that the first tranche of Ukrainians are working. They've been here for a couple of months. The oil and gas industry employers would like to have, settle in for 4, 5, 6 months with this first group, get their feet under them, understand how the whole program works, and then they'll be ready to bring in the next group. We are working with service clubs and city economic development programmers to make sure that we get sponsors and employers and support for these folks as they come over. My understanding from talking with the folks in the program is there's about 500 people waiting in Ukraine that are signed up and ready to come as we begin to get the process up to speed. So looking forward to that. I think a couple of our workover rigs actually have Ukrainian crews at this point. And from what I understand, the English-speaking capabilities are improving and things are going well. So we're off to a little bit of a slow start, but it's going to pick up substantially. So we'll kind of keep you in touch with that. When you look at the rig count, those 33 rigs working today are still capable of punching out 65 to 70 wells in a month. So that's enough to maintain production, but it isn't enough to create strong, growth, more than 1 or 2% annual. So still a little on the low side. On the wells permitted, the 87 wells that we issued permits for in August, that would represent 2.64 wells per rig per month. So that's more than they can drill. So they are building an inventory towards the winter. And on the completion side, as you can see, that's increasing with 91 completions, and that brought our waiting on completion list down. And we've been seeing that trend all summer long as the people that had a lot of duck wells are getting those wells put on production. That's really what's driving the production increase. Record number of new wells and inactive well count coming down, very positive. When you look at the initial grant work that we're doing to get rid of orphan wells, we're now at 66 out of 93 at the end of August for the plugging. Should be completed by the end of this month. We are, though, only at 5 out of 167 on the reclamation. Now, that's going to pick up a lot as the crop comes off. And the months of September and October should be good, assuming that winter stays away until Halloween, which is, kind of the norm for North Dakota, but it doesn't always happen, does it? So I can remember many times when my children were young, putting Halloween costumes over snowsuits. So that's not uncommon in North Dakota. So we are reaching the end of that season. We have asked and have gotten a positive signal from the Department of Interior about an extension so that we can complete that reclamation work next year without interfering with the farmers and making a mess out there. So that's good. 21 frac crews operating. That's plenty to keep up with our drilling rig and actually cut into that duck well count. So that's a positive. When you look at the charts, it's a bit scary at $4 gas and very low inventories. The SPR is at the lowest point that it's been since I think about 1986. So the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is low. The purchase that they made in August that's actually going to go into the SPR in September is only like 1% of what they've sold. So there really are no plans during the remainder of this 4-year Biden administration, the remaining first term of refilling the SPR. And as you can see, the non-SPR inventory is pretty low. It's approaching the bottom of the 5-year average. So the relief in gas prices, there'll be some as the refineries come back on, but there's also upward pressure on crude oil prices. And when we look at Saudi Arabia and Russia, they've decided to extend their cuts through the end of the year. So they're enjoying the high world crude oil prices, and those are really the basic thing that's driving the higher gasoline prices that you're seeing. Finally, just want to talk a little bit about gas capture. Those numbers are great. We're seeing lots of 96s and 98s, and I've never seen a 99 before. And so for the first time ever, we're seeing the fee area of Fort Berthold, and we had a big compressor expansion project by the Robinson Lake folks to try to get that fee FBIR gas into the Robinson Lake plant, along with moving gas that was coming into the plant north of there, all the way over to the Sanderson plant, the outrigger plant on the Montana border. So a huge sea change there, seeing the fee area of Fort Berthold at 99%. I can't recall ever seeing a number like that. So we're setting lots of records and really strong performance. Still have the 3 fields that we're focused on, really trying to get infrastructure into Deepwater Creek Bay and Twin Buttes and Charleston. Those are difficult. A lot of federal lands and rights of way, as well as the fact that they're kind of remote, and so they're problem areas. They're not easy to get infrastructure into, but really good natural gas capture numbers. The other difficulty with building infrastructure is that natural gas price. you know, we continue to see inventories even going into winter well above the 5-year average, and our natural gas price is only $2.28. So, but I know, and I think Justin will be able to talk maybe a little bit more about this next week, hoping to connect up with our midstreamers in Watford City. Is that next week? Yeah, at the Petroleum Council's annual meeting, as well as we're beginning our fall round of annual meetings with the midstreamers. I'm hoping to hear that there are plans to build infrastructure, because as we grow that oil production and as tier 2 and tier 1 produce more, we're going to see those gas oil ratios increase out there. And there really is a strong drive to move the drilling operations out into the tier 2 and tier 3 areas. Nothing really totally new in the federal regulatory areas, other than we are spending a lot of time and effort on comments, and the proposals just keep coming. And so that's what we anticipate for the next 1.5 to 2 years is lots of rulemaking proposals. Our intention is to push back on all of those and try to maintain states' rights and federalism to the absolute extent that we possibly can. So really all around very good news. I guess I should have mentioned revenue forecasts. So July, oil prices were 1% above revenue forecast, and production was 7% above. So state revenues should be really strong. As of today, the price looks like it's more than 20% above revenue forecast, and production continues to be probably 7 to 10% above revenue forecast. I got a couple of questions, actually 3, I think, maybe more coming in. So I'll attempt to answer those. The first one was the BLM just held a lease sale here in North Dakota for federal lands, and they took in only $2.45 million. The question was, why? And we've been following this all along. In fact, we have litigation going. The BLM is resisting as much as absolutely possible Judge Trainer's order to evaluate the nominations and get those out for auction. And so they started way back. Well, let me make sure I look at my notes. So the planning for this sale started in March of 23 with 68 parcels being evaluated. Now, they say there were 68 nominations. There are actually 817 out there. So there's a lot of nominations to go through. But it started in March with 68 parcels being evaluated. By May, they had knocked that down to 32. And by September, they had knocked it down to 19. And when we took a look at the lease sales, all but a half a dozen of those 19 were in pretty low priority areas in terms of industry interest. So the answer is that BLM is resisting all of our efforts to put a substantial number of parcels up for auction. And the parcels that they are putting up are not the high priority parcels that we have identified through conversations with trust lands and with industry. So we will continue those arguments and that fight, and we'll be back in Judge Trainer's courtroom in October. We'll give you an update then. I was asked to give an assessment of the latest information about Summit Carbon Solutions pipeline project. That's really outside our lane. We are following it because if they're successful in getting their pipeline in, we will be the ones to amalgamate and permit and regulate their storage facilities. We've had some initial conversations. We're actually looking at some draft storage facility applications and working through those in consultation with the health department. But in terms of the pipeline, that's just not an area that we really have a lot of inside information or can comment much about. And sorry about that, but that's a Public Service Commission jurisdiction issue. And then I think we were asked about the DAPL EIS. So DAPL EIS was transmitted to us Monday. The one that we got last week on, I think Thursday, was the wrong version. And so we got the new version on Monday. We have until the 13th of November to submit comments. It's going to be an all of government effort. And so we actually are working with Special Attorney General, Legal Counsel, as well as everybody from Water Resources to the PSC to Trust Lands to Department of Mineral Resources to put together a cogent set of comments on that. No real indication of when a final EIS might be issued. We just know when the comment period closes. We asked the Corps about why there was no preferred alternative, because it is unusual to not have a preferred alternative in the, for them to list 5 alternatives and not issue a preferred one. But they said that's going to be in their final EIS, and so that's not the norm, but I guess it comports legally with what how they do NEPA and environmental impact studies. We have a great deal of heartburn with their alternative 5, and obviously we like 3 the best. 4 might be okay, and we disagree with how they characterize alternative 1. So there is a lot of work to do, even though this has been going on since 2016. Yeah. Any more questions, Bridget? All right.
I think there's a couple of questions.
Good.
With the workforce, what's sort of behind the issue getting workers out there to the oil fields and whatnot?
Yeah, so the question was, what is the real issue with getting workers out there? What took place was during COVID and during the slowdown, the Permian Basin stayed operating at a much higher level than we did in North Dakota. And so the bulk of our workforce moved to Texas or New Mexico or left the industry altogether. And the industry has been unable to attract new people effectively back into the industry. So the people that made the move to the Permian or left the industry altogether are unwilling to move back to North Dakota. And so they have a very robust workforce in Texas and New Mexico. We don't have it so much here. So hence the efforts that we've been talking about through the legislature to put in the career and technical education programs to build a workforce, starting with high school sophomores. But that takes a couple of years. And to implement this Bach and Grow program, and to bring Ukrainian workers here, people that really, really want to work. So it's multi-pronged, but dominantly our workforce left for the South and stayed there.
Do you think the Bach and Grow expand to other?
I think it's going to expand. My conversations with the folks is the initial focus is going to be on Ukrainians and Western North Dakota, but there is an interest on the part of Eastern North Dakota employers, and they've been getting contacted by other nations. And so it's a completely different status. These are not like J5 or J3 workers. Boy, I should have brought that page. Has a different title, but when you go to sponsor one of these folks, it's pretty intimidating. So the nice thing that the Bach and Grow program has set up is that every one of the people, when they land here in North Dakota, will have a job, they will have housing, they will have food, all that's being provided by the employers, and the legal aspects of a sponsorship are being covered by an immigration law firm. And so that's all being coordinated by this Bach and Grow program. Otherwise, really, really hard to bring a worker into the United States. Really hard. But like I said, there's 500 Ukrainians right now that want to come, and the talk is that there are literally thousands. And these are not people who could serve in the Ukrainian military. These are people that are over the age or for other reasons aren't going to do military service in Ukraine. But they need to support their families and rebuild their homes and businesses. So.
Had a clarification about reclamation.
Yes.
How many wells did you say would be reclaimed?
Our goal with the IIJA money is 167. So all 93 that we plug, plus I got to do the math here quick. That gives me an extra 74, I believe, that were left over from the CARES Act time period. And because the time frame is longer, we're taking a slower, more methodical approach to these reclaims, and I think that's going to be to the benefit of getting the work done so that we can really do it right the first time, not have to go back. So 167. Yeah, great. So the question was asked about the new rules, and I think you're right, Joey. I think that the enhanced oil recovery potential well status is probably the biggest undertaking that we're having in terms of writing rules and anticipating comments from industry on. Like we told industry, like we told the Industrial Commission, anything we could think of that might disqualify a well from achieving that status, we put in the rule, and we're expecting them to explain to us why that should come out. So we're challenging them to make this a really good rule that doesn't result in a lot of additional wells out there that might potentially become orphaned. I would say that the second one that we're really excited and seems like a small little rule is the fired vessel to production facility rule. You know, we went from 125 feet to 65. That seems sort of abstract and odd. But what we're seeing is our major oil companies are completely redesigning their production facilities. We are the tip of the spear on this. And so they've come up with we use the acronym LEAF. We got that from Marathon, low emission automated facility. So instead of atmospheric tanks that vent natural gas or have a problem putting the tank vapors into the sails, they have low pressure production vessels on those facilities, and this will allow them to shrink the size of the facility and build a lot more of those. And there's about 10 of them operating out there. So if we have an opportunity, I promised the tax department I was going to take them out and show them one of these. So if we have I'll let you know. You could tag along. They are pretty amazing, and they've talked about their goal long term is to change the A from automated to autonomous, which means it's a robot, right? That's processing oil and natural gas out there with just minimal intervention from a human being. But it has the potential to totally eliminate flaring and venting of natural gas, and it's plug and play, like I've got to be careful about brands, but like a Lego set. The gas chillers and compressors and everything can be added or removed as drilling takes place and volumes go up and down and moved around. So it's highly mobile and really is going to put a significant change. You know, we talked about incentives to try to get at that last 4% of flaring, and this is really important to that. So.
Last question, with the I saw there's a requirement for improved gas volume metering. Is what's sort of the What will that add? Are our numbers not as accurate as they could be right now, or?
Yeah, that's correct. So the question was the improved gas metering. So up to this point, our flared volumes have been quite a few of them based on estimates from gas oil ratio tests. And the technology has come along now to actually be able to meter gas going to a flare. So we're encouraging companies to implement that rather than on a periodic basis calculate or measure the gas oil ratio and then use that to come up with their flaring numbers. So there's new technology in that area as well. You might think it would be easy, but those volumes change tremendously, and you get liquids dropping out in those meters and messing with them. They're up until this point, they were very, very inaccurate. But yeah, there's new technology that can be implemented there, and we really want to get innovative. That's a big part of these leaf facilities. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. Then we will have Justin Kringstad from North Dakota Pipeline Authority.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Justin Kringstad, Director of the North Dakota Pipeline Authority. We'll get right into it from the production side. You heard from Lynn about what was happening in North Dakota. And then when we take a peek at what was taking place in our neighboring states, very consistent numbers. Again, the one thing I will note that has changed from last month, Montana did pick up 2 rigs. I suspect those were 2 rigs that were in North Dakota. Migrated across the border as again this geologic play doesn't understand political boundaries, so it the rigs will follow where operators have acreage positions. But just for a note, again, when we talk about our oil systems, our natural gas systems, again, those as well interplay between the 2 states, and so everything that happens in that eastern Montana does influence our midstream needs here in North Dakota as well. Those month-to-month shifts, so again, pretty minor when we look at just the month-to-month versus historical on the top 2 portions of this graphic. GOR was up just slightly, and so that was, again, kind of consistent with what we were anticipating with where the rigs were at. The big news when we talk, I'll talk here in a moment about gas, but on the crude oil side, no significant changes. On our movements, whether by pipeline or by rail. The marketplace was fairly static with what pricing was doing. We saw, again, that Brent WTI spread sub $5. That's going to keep pushing those elective barrels onto the pipeline network. And again, it's kind of interesting. If you just take a step back, obviously we look at these month to month and these minute changes. You step back 10 years that is captured on this graphic, and you see just what we have experienced in the basin here over the last 10 years, just that dramatic shift between pipe and rail. And again, emphasizing the value of adequate and sufficient pipeline capacity, what that means for the marketplace and what it allows. So it has been quite an interesting, 10 plus years of how this play has continued to evolve. The pricing as of June, Pad 1, Pad 5, consistent again, our 2 highest priced markets. Again, the only markets that we can primarily reach by pipe are going to be your Pad 2 and Pad 3 markets, whether that's on some of the classic systems to the Great Lakes or the Dakota Access system down to that Gulf Coast. And then again, our only 2 options for meeting those Pad 1 and Pad 5 needs from North Dakota is by rail transport, which was steady June to July. Almost no change in the estimates of what we're seeing. Again, typically about 1 train per day on those movements, and that Pad 5 Pacific Northwest being the dominant destination for those barrels. Again, I don't know what would cause a major shift back towards either increasing volumes or shifting marketplace to those East Coast refineries. If we do see some type of waterborne disruption at the global level, that would probably be the biggest trigger that we would start to see any type of increase in market share over there. And as we look at pricing today, over $90 at WTI pricing at Cushing. And again, positive pricing at Clearbrook, so things continue to look very strong. We're seeing about a $4 to $4.50 discount at the wellhead in North Dakota, which again, compared to our historic average of $7 to $8 discounts and some price swings that got up into the teens and even $20+ ranges, the pricing is sitting in a very, very strong place for North Dakota. When we look at the rig counts that Lynn was speaking to earlier, and just for context, if we were to go back to pre-COVID time period, roughly 2016 to COVID coming into play, we were in an environment where every dollar that WTI would move would typically move our rig count in North Dakota by about one rig. And so you can see again just that change in operator sentiment and activity levels that we're seeing in this $80+ environment at mid 30s type rig count. And so trying to understand where that new normal is, how that continues to play out, not only the rest of this year, but in the years in the future, is going to be important as, again, we're looking at midstream solutions to keep this product moving. No major changes, truck and rail with Canada, that was all very consistent. And then the big news that, again, that really the modern record, I believe, Lynn, if I'm not mistaken, 4% flaring, 96% capture. When this was being discussed years and years ago and those gas capture targets were put in place, at the time, I didn't think we could get to sub 5% flaring in an environment where production was growing or flat. So this is phenomenal. My hat's off to the midstream companies, the operators that are making that happen out there, the cooperation, communication, all those things that had to come together. We knew what the challenges were. So to see it on a month where it was a record level of natural gas, record level capture, lowest percentage of flaring that we've seen, it's pretty phenomenal. So again, very, very good news on that front. That was just for historic context on slide 12. Slide 13, again, just getting back to that collaboration efforts, keeping pace. That's one of the biggest things. You have to have that well connection and that gathering system there at the time that well is coming on. If you don't capture that first flush portion of that production, you're going to miss a whole lot of gas. So that continues to look good. Pricing, Lynn talked about this a bit as well. This is the EIA's most recent outlook from earlier this week. They're anticipating strong prices all through 2024 and going forward northwards of $80+. So it's going to be a strong environment. That's going to continue to keep interest very strong in North Dakota. So it'll be interesting as we head towards the colder season and then as people start preparing budgets and things for that 24 timeframe. On the gas production side, gas capture processing, we're continuing to look at that. I noted last month some of the challenges we know that will be coming up of trying to determine what's the appropriate timing and scope of the next sets of expansions. And again, folks are working on it, but nothing public at this time. On our interstate systems, I noted the discussions about Northern Border Pipeline last month and some of the maintenance and things that were taking place. This is just a quick snapshot of where we're at, north of 80% market share, continuing to see that trend as North Dakota goes up, Canadian volumes are going down, and then the need for additional capacity out of the region. The other thing that I've been working closely on is some new views surrounding BTU levels that I touch on. One thing I don't think I necessarily discuss at these meetings is that when that BTU number goes up, that means that there's higher ethane content. That means there's more volume, and the higher BTU takes up more of that available capacity on the pipeline network. And so as we're going forward, this week I was presenting at an event and challenging the industry that this is going to be a challenge over the next several years, is managing that BTU, because every BTU is pipe space, and we're going to need every single molecule of pipe capacity over the next several years. And one way to manage that is managing BTU levels, even if it's not from a regulatory standpoint or a tariff standpoint, just a pure physical space perspective. We're going to need to likely see some very strong efforts to manage capacity, and BTU is going to be one of the ways that may be managed. So as things get tighter over the next year or two, this is something we'll keep a very close watch on. And then last month I noted the pig runs this week. Tuesday the cleaning tool was launched and ran, and then today was scheduled to be the smart pig, the magnetic flux leakage tool. They've postponed that till tomorrow, so it's been a bit of an up and down week as far as pipe capacity. We've seen, again, things out in the field and other maintenance and things collaborating with this, so it's been an odd week on the natural gas front, and I suspect that a couple months from now, when we start to look at the September data, we'll start to piece together the story a little bit more to see what the overall impact was to not only our in-state movements and processing, but then some of our interstate movements on the transmission side. NGL, again, where we're sitting, I noted last month that One Oak did announce that they're going to move forward with that again will be one of those key pieces. In order to stay as aggressive as the industry has been, nothing can fall apart. There's no room for error anymore on the gathering, the processing, the transmission of residue, the transmission of liquids. Every single one of those pieces needs to be operating at full steam ahead in order for us to stay this aggressive on gas capture. So with that, I believe that's all I have for comments. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
And anything on the drawing board as far as plant processing or?
Yep. So the question for those online was, are there any plans for expanding gas processing capacity? There certainly is. Nothing public at this time from those participants, but likely in coming time, those will start to be made public by those participants. Yep.
And then talk about the pipeline capacity, sort of what's behind those challenges besides the growing beast.
Yep. So on the pipeline capacity, it starts all the way from the wellhead. So when you say what has to happen to keep our gas capture as strong as it is, everywhere from the piece of pipe that's going to the wellhead, to the compressor station, to the processing facility, to the transmission side of it, and all the maintenance and things that have to go along with that. Winter's coming. Winter always gets challenging for us with pigging activities and the cold ground temperatures. So that's going to have to be something that is going to have to be very aggressive throughout the colder months coming up. So every single one of those pieces has to come together. So when we look at some of the bigger term challenges that are going to take some more time and more effort, it's on the transmission side. Some of those local things can get handled at a more quicker time pace than some of our larger interstate needs. And so those are the ones that start to get concerning of, will we have enough capacity at the appropriate time for those?
So is there any movement on bringing Bakken gas to the valley?
So on that front, folks are still looking at solutions. It's been nothing new per se from the last time we chatted about it. So, yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.